Welcome, everybody to Ranked. This is the show analyzing and discussing the evolving meta of the professional Starcraft 2 pro scene. I'm your host, Drekken, and I am joined with the Doctor as my co-host and our guest, Max from TerranCraft. How are you guys?
I'm doing great. How about you, Max?
I'm good. It's a good morning. Yeah.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
And you excited to talk some Starcraft, Terran versus Terran?
Dude, yeah. Terran. I'm a Terran. Terran. And I think Max knows even more. So
yeah, that's it. That's why we're here to defer to Max, the master. For those of you who don't know, Max has been the sole creator and writer for TerranCraft. Max, why don't you give us a little bit of introduction to our audience about TerranCraft? If they don't if they play Terran, they probably already know, but just in case, let us know.
Right. So I'm Max. I wrote the blog called TerranCraft.com, and it covers a lot of articles that go beyond Terran, but majority of them kind of talk about the builds, the meta game, evolving different Terran matchups, and I do some other research within the Starcraft scene itself.
Absolutely. And so this is the absolutely perfect person to have here for us to discuss TvT trends. Basically, what we are currently seeing, the patches, we're kind of on the final patches, and just what to be looking out for in TvT meta. So why don't we open up the discussion? Let's do an overview. Why don't we start kind of like, what do we think Terran versus Terran is looking at right now? The Doctor, what do you think?
oh man, it's definitely a matchup I've always felt is kind of like on a knife's edge the whole way through. Like it's very, very aggressive. And additionally, it's also a matchup where if you fall behind an army supply, I feel like you have potential to catch up in the form of if you get your siege tanks in just the right position. Like positioning, I think matters more in Terran versus Terran than any other matchup, and because of that, you're able to sometimes win fights with lower army supply simply because you have the better position. And it's true in the other matchups too, but I think especially Terran has that as one of the core defining traits of the matchup.
Max, what about your thoughts?
My favorite matchup. So because I win the most,
right?
That's when I think it carries me my MMR a lot. Like I have 75 above win rate, but my
Nice.
other matches would be like below 50. It's easy when you play against the easiest race.
I'm sure many Terran out there will be like, but in terms of the pro scene, where is the meta currently going? How do you currently characterize where the pro scene stands for TvT?
I'm surprised that there's still some minor innovation around some of the stuff in the early game, in the mid game, and the late game. And there's no real true crazy like defining innovation in some sense, but there's a lot about game theory. So you see people kind of flipping back and forth in terms of meta game choices and how some of the risk assessment to roll the dice at the right time.
Are we seeing a lot of innovation in terms of not literal innovation, but are we seeing a lot of innovation in terms of changing up, especially the late game in Terran?
Yeah, I think right now for this year probably can see some slow change whereby previously the Raven is a good example. Previously it was like one off kind of thing, and you see one player use it only, like Maru, and right now it becomes one of the main tools in almost every top players right now in the game. And then there are some other counter moves to it as well. So you can see it start to develop this year.
That's true. We've been seeing a lot more of continuous Raven production. After the big Raven change, when it got interference matrix and later the energy cost got changed, you saw everyone like make one or two to bust tanks, and then they kind of stopped making it. But more recently, they've been getting Corbin Reactor and just making even additional Ravens in the late game. So, do you have any thoughts around the late game Raven production? Do you think it's good? Because like sometimes you see one side only go for the Ravens, and the other side doesn't. Like, do you think one of them's correct to go for Ravens?
Right. So actually, I have written an article on this, and there are depends on the timing of the Raven transition, but I think you have a very accurate observation in terms of like having one side going for Raven but not the other one, because one of the prerequisites when you do a relatively early, or should I say standard Raven transition, is that you kind of need to have the air dominance first, right? So you cannot both sides having air dominance. You only have one side. So usually you see one player transition earlier than the other.
Is that are we talking about mainly using Vikings and libs to control dominance in air and basically holding down air with Vikings and libs, or any other kind of
Right. So in the mid game to the late game, there's this point whereby do you want to keep making Viking, or do you want to like kind of stop Viking production, make some medevacs to allow you to roam around the map more to attack? So there are players who like to like, no, I have to keep my medevac to the minimum, and I just keep making Vikings. So make sure I have more Viking than you do, and that gives me air control, right? It's less to do about Liberator, but more about the actual Viking count. So you cannot have feature on me in terms of having your tank siege on me. Without the Viking count, your Liberator is relatively, not that useful at the peak of game. So with that high Viking count, which leads to your air dominance, in turn, it gives you the prerequisite, the ticket to have an earlier Raven transition.
What do you think about that, Doc?
Yeah. So basically what I'm hearing, once you get air control, you're free to the world opens up and you can make more Ravens and you can make Liberators. Do you think there's any opportunity to make Ravens still, even if you don't have air control? I see that time to time, and I'm like, why are you getting Corvin Reactor when you're behind the Viking count? It seems like they just get killed by the Vikings. Do you think there's any merit to making Raven, even when there's
you can keep making Raven, but it has to be like really late game whereby you have many bases, so there's no worries about replenishing your army. If that is the case, then yeah, you can keep making Raven even if the opponent has the air control. And we see that in some of the games with Maru, for example, whereby he kind of cut tanks in the late game. I mean, keep it to minimum, but focus a lot on Marine and Raven production. So it's about being more mobile when opponent has the less mobile Viking units army. So that is just counter to the counter in some sense.
A lot of times I've been seeing is like Ravens have been relegated to being very defensive. Like defensive Raven seems to be the standard. All right, correct me if I'm wrong. Does anyone ever using offensive Ravens, like more aggressively? I haven't seen any in the pro meta, but I'm just seeing it. Have you seen an opportunity of when people may use offensive Ravens more aggressively?
I think right now is in Terran matchup in the early to mid game transition period. People just make Raven. It's just a matter of like, do you make 1, 2, or 3?
Right.
So the number is that does not allow you to define who is going to attack or not, but because there's this basic defender advantage, so it's hard for me to say, I'm just go forward and use my Raven offensive, right? So it's less about Raven, but more about in general how it is. And it has a lot to do with the last Raven change, whereby you cannot just erase the defender advantage using the interference matrix on opponent's tank, because it doesn't matter, right? Like without attacking a defender when there's no tank, so there's no defender advantage in some sense, right?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a shame that you're so reliant on disabling your opponent's tanks and disabling your opponent's Ravens and just tech units in general, that you aren't able to move across the map with the Ravens and harass with auto turrets as much.
Well, that's what I was thinking, right? So, obviously that's what it is. It is kind of like the defender's advantage stalwart to make sure that you keep that advantage and you can hold off. But I wouldn't have mind, to see a little bit of harassing auto turns. Like, I know that's not something you'd probably see in pro games, but that might be a little fun.
You see it from time to time.
Yeah, like I feel like it's a very rare thing to watch in a like.
Yeah, no, it's definitely rare because you have to be confident you're not going to die to your opponent's Ravens.
Well, that's exactly it. Exactly it, right?
But if you're confident, like honestly, I think Raven's one of the best harassment tools Terran has because you fly in, drop a turret, you're guaranteed to deny mining time for quite some time, and you don't risk the Raven because like it does damage while it's gone. So
right?
Yeah, no, it's super good.
So we're gonna jump in and we're gonna go and observe a few games from recent tournaments. One from Kings of Battles, and then another from DreamHack Winter 2020. And we're gonna take a look at some of the early and mid game and late game TvT games. So let's get this started. And all right, so
can't worker split though.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of observing. And, ooh. So this is Cure versus Maru, and this one is from Kings of Battle. This was the finals, actually. Game 3 of the finals. Did you guys watch this one? Actually, we can speed this up a little bit.
I don't think I saw it live.
Kings of Battles had so many TvT.
There was a lot of Terran. I generally go back and watch Terran VODs of pros just so I could stay in the loop of best builds and whatnot.
Pause.
Yep. Pause. All right.
Right. So they're already doing something that is new to the meta. So if you kind of backtrack a little bit, you can see that both get 2 guesses. That itself is not too new, right? It's one of the most common opening. However, the conventional 2 guess opening in Terran is you get your first guess at 15, your second guess at 17. But then right now, very rarely is 15 and 17, and players switch up to 16 and 17. So that is something that's new to the meta because people just realize that way back they want to be safe with the earlier factory so that your Helens, is good against Proxy Reaper, for example. But right now they figure like I don't need to be that early, I still can get the merits of the 2 guess opening. So right now, as you can see for both players, they get 16 and 17 guess instead. So this is something that is kind of like new this year, So yeah, it's kind of something still a new innovation.
For sure. What are they planning on using that adjustment in like gas income for? Like, are they looking to get more factory units or
no? Just that because usually when you get two gas, right, you pull SCV out of the refinery so that you can get the mineral for the expansion. The purpose of 2 gas early on is just to get an early factory, right? So if early factory, if opponent is Proxy Reaper, you have Helen and in time, so basically you neutralize it. You don't have to be bunker and stuff. And in the very, very, very old builds, like 3 or 4 years ago, you just go straight to Starport because since you get 2 gas early on. But right now, because you're like, it's not that good, so let's expand. So the trade-off is I get a quick tag to factory, then I expand.
Right. Okay.
Right. But expansion is always later than people just taking 1 guess by default, right? Just makes sense. So this is kind of like, if you get a slight change here, so my difference between a 1 guess opening and a 2 guess opening, you get even smaller, right? Economically. So that is the rationale behind this minor change in opening.
Gotcha.
Okay. Let's go a little bit further again. So in here in the opening, how do we see these either Cure or Maru doing what is traditional in Terran openings or against traditional Terran openings? We get the Reapers coming. We have Reapers. And then most likely Hellions, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think one of the most standard openings is you get 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions, and you duke it out against your opponent's presumably 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions. And
Okay, so exactly it. So presumably.
Yeah. A lot of the meta game comes down to how much you can cut and how much more money you can get by skipping Hellions or something like that.
So in that case, what are we talking? Like you even mentioned this once in your article, Max, about the idea of the game theory of deciding, between 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions, versus maybe cutting it, doing 2 Reapers and 1 Hellion, and possibly losing and making those decisions. What are some of the thought points a player might make before deciding which one to do?
Right. So I think in game theory, conceptually wise, there are a lot of things whereby, do player have complete information? That's the important thing here.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case here, we obviously don't have complete information because it's StarCraft. So when that happens, there's this issue whereby you need to roll your dice to a certain extent, right? If you're going to attack and opponent just have more, you're just going to lose, right? And it comes down and find out, okay, let's keep making Reaper and Hellions, like Ian was mentioning. So it becomes a game of like who has more. You have more Reaper, you have more Hellion, and then it comes to a point whereby, right, I got to cut some of the corners. I cannot keep making Reaper and Hellion. I got to share and so on. And so this become a major decision at this stage of the game. Do you make a certain number of Reapers, certain number of Hellions?
For sure.
So,
there's one thing I wanted to mention before you bring that point, Doc, because we're talking about game theory, and I love game theory. So what is Max, are you fairly familiar with game theory?
Working on a paper on that.
Okay, so what's a Nash equilibrium of... What's a Nash equilibrium? Yes.
Right, so I would say that there's no real Nash equilibrium here.
Really?
There's
so
no
just for the audience...
You really got to do some machine learning and AI to do it because the condition of the play changes over time because of the map differences,
Right.
So I cannot pinpoint like, oh, here's a Nash equilibrium because Nash equilibrium just say like, is what it is. You can't change anymore, right?
Between the deciding of the Hellion. So if we were to put into, and for those of our audience who are not super nerdy into game theory, Nash equilibrium is where the strategy where essentially neither one would either gain or lose based on if they change their strategy, and it's the optimum strategy. So between choosing 2 Hellions and 5 Reapers or cutting the corner, would it be best to just both to make 2 Hellions? 3 Hellions. 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions. Oh my gosh, so much. And that would maybe be equal, or
okay, right. So I need to kind of backtrack a little bit because when you talk about natural in this, like, sure, if you want to be more confining in terms of factors. So number one, both players have to use 2 guest opening, right? If you don't do that, like the natural command will be completely different. So if both players use 2 guest opening, then the first factor is to use SCV scout.
Right.
If you do not know what the opponent player is doing, then the whole thing falls apart. So right now you both know the opponent are using the same opening, 2 guests. Next thing would be the natural equilibrium, right? In general, what we see in modern TvT could be, based on current knowledge, the natural equilibrium, whereby you make 2 Reaper and 1 Hellion.
Right.
Then you make a Widow Mine.
A Widow, okay.
So it's 2 Reaper, 1 Hellion, 1 Widow Mine.
Right.
So in my opinion, that is the most optimal one if you really have to roll your dice.
Okay.
Right. And you see some players making some minor differences whereby I make 3 Reaper, 1 Hellion, 1 Widow Mine. Right. Or so and so forth. Yeah. But in my opinion, 2 Reaper, 1 Hellion, 1 Widow Mine. Statistically speaking, I look at some of the games, it seems to be the natural equilibrium, and it makes sense quantitatively and qualitatively.
Okay. Well, you know what? I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I did not expect us to get so nerdy. That is actually, I did not think about that. That's actually Widow Mine threw me for a loop.
There are reasons I can go in depth. I can see stream right now. You see Widow Mine on the bottom right. on the ramp.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Right.
That's actually why I asked to pause, because we're talking about 3 Reapers, 2 Hellions, and these guys
there's a
are
Widow Mine.
making Widow Mines. Yeah, like they both
Right.
made a Widow Mine, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty spicy.
So
That is
okay, I
pretty
think I can backtrack a little bit. So it's easier to appreciate the value of the reader mine at this point of time. So let's kind of be outright. When you go for 2 guest opening, the basic like you just make 2 Reaper, 1 Helen. Okay, and the next thing is, do I make more Reaper and more Helen? The next level will be, okay, I'm gonna make 3 Reaper and 2 Helen. So that is I counter the mirror matchup choice, right? Because I have 1 more Helen, 1 more Reaper, I win the battle. And then comes a point that who attack is gonna lose because you don't have a RAM advantage, right? Even if you have 5, I have 5. If you attack, you're gonna lose because I'm on the RAM, on top of RAM.
Right.
So it comes to a point that, okay, if both players are going to make 5 units, then and both players who are not going to attack because attacking is going to be bad, right? Like I mentioned, then both players are going to be defensive if 5 units, Reapers and Helens. Then logically, that's where the game theory comes in, the meta game comes in. Okay, if both players are going to be defensive, there's no point making more Reaper and Helen.
Right. Man,
right, so
really...
you go back to cutting that back down to 2 Reaper and 1 Helen. And that's where the reader mind comes in. So you can sit back with 2 Reaper and 1 Helen. But with the reader mind, it doesn't matter if opponent have 1 Reaper, 1 additional Reaper and 1 Helen. The reader mind defensively is going to do the job. So you cut the right amount of corner to deal with in case opponent really just so-called brainlessly, you have 3 Reaper and 2 Helen and run up your ramp.
Gotcha. So it's not a Widow Mine drop like we see versus Protoss and more recently Zerg. It's let's have the speed defensively, so that way if you try to run up my ramp, you'll get punished. And it's more cost effective than building more like Hellions that I probably won't need.
Right. Okay. Man, this would be really fun to put in like a matrix, like a game theory matrix, but I don't know.
For sure. It makes sense. It makes sense. I think we can keep going from here.
Yeah, let's do it.
And you know what, pause here? Yep. Sorry. So you can see her, right? Maru make a medevac. Now, if you kind of backtrack to 6 months, 10 months ago, because 2020, making a medevac as a first starport unit, I think that is fine.
Okay.
So right now you can see after starport out, that's when the Reaper and Helen decision making is kind of comes to an end. As you can see, Maru is already making Marine with reactor, right? So right now the decision making that what we just discussed about Reaper and Helen is kind of like it's past, right? So most players we have like 2 to 3 Reapers if they don't trade it off. 1 to 2 Helen, you may or may not read the mind, right? So you can cure here has a reader mind.
He does, yeah.
And the next point is in the first starport, what unit do you make? The default one would be Raven. So Raven is considered like the best unit at this stage of the game. The alternative is making a medevac, as you can see what Maru is doing right here. So the medevac is to some people in the past we are getting like, there's no point dropping because you cannot get much of it done because what do you drop? Drop more Reaper, drop Helen. There's no point dropping, right?
Right.
So people don't use the medevac drop.
You can drop the Widow Mine though.
Exactly, and that's why with the Widow Mine, the medevac, the value of a medevac change.
It goes up because you have the Widow Mine for defensive, but then you can reuse the Widow Mine to drop him off and go offensive.
Yes, because the stage of like requiring Widow Mine to kind of beat the the game theory part is the window is closed. Yes.
It's closed, right? So you kind of recycle it by sending it off to maybe try and get something off in the opponent's mineral line.
Yes, so the Widow Mine itself cannot the splash damage can kill SCVs. But the problem is with the Widow Mine, like maybe 4 Marines or 6 Marines, maybe 1 Helen, doesn't really matter. So you cannot get close to clear all the units off, because if you get close, if you own Marine, the Widow Mine is gonna fire off. You cannot win the battle, especially there's a medevac, right? So you kind of have this small battle back and forth at opponent's middle at one middle line. So it delay mining, and that's where it kind of started to get ahead through these minor tricks.
Okay. All right. Let's continue. I think we may have all we almost need what we need from the early game of this game, but we'll just go just a little bit. If anyone has a final thoughts before we move on to our next game from this one.
This is a really good game to show this kind of meta. So you can see load up the reader mine. And the whole purpose of this is, just to delay mining. You can see Maru is probably going to barrel the reader mine. And then you can look at production tab, way back in Maru's base, right? It's kind of like, you're just transitioning back to the same thing. Like Raven is the same thing. So it's just kind of like delay Raven by one production cycle for this meta. So you can see go straight to middle line. The whole purpose is delay mining. So you can see, okay, you have Reaper coming over. No, there's a reader mine. Yep, barrel are delay mining. You can see the delay mining is there, right?
Right. Get the max value out of the Widow mine.
They got a little bit done, and they traded units they probably won't need late game.
Exactly.
But I'm still
Reaper and Helen are not useful beyond this period anymore. Just a matter of scouting. So trading that off using the medevac is a good way to kind of get value of all these early game units.
For sure. And it's no small trade-off, though, to delay your Raven, because the important thing isn't having the Raven, it's having enough energy on the Raven. And if you delay the Raven, you're not going to have potentially not energy for Interference Matrix or other spells, such as the Dorito Cannon, as I like to call it.
Yeah, it's like the Dorito Cannon. Cute.
I actually forgot the name of it because I call it the Dorito Cannon so often. Anti-armor missile. There we go.
I think that's like really, I like that idea. I don't know why I never think of Starcraft like that, but obviously I should. It's like this idea of once the transitioning between the periods and then making those units more like max value, right? Seeking max value out of transitional units, right? Obviously, like that Widow Mine, defensive in the mid and early game opening. Once that's gone, all right, let's see what kind of work we can get out of this. If it gets something, all right. If it doesn't, all right, that's fine too. Our next game.
Talking about the reader mine job in the TvT that you see, I see a lot of streamers kind of screw it up. It's less about they can't do it, but the conventional knowledge that when you do a job, the purpose is not to YOLO, but you want to just keep the track. That's so you can't pick up and move away. And once you pick up and opponent cycle lock onto your medevac, that's where things start to screw up. So the instinct of picking up always screw up this job.
Yeah, because it's basically almost a suicide mission if they have the cycle in position.
If you can get the medevac out, it's fine. Like the units you can just show it there, it's fine.
Yeah, you should probably just drop the medevac and fly away with it and let all the units die.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
Like, because the medevac provides continuous value throughout the game, and the Widow Mine, I mean, it could, but like Widow Mines and Hellions aren't the units you really need a lot of in TvT. It's all about the tanks and Vikings.
Speaking of
and Ravens too.
Well, that's what we're gonna get into just shortly. We'll be going into a game versus Maru versus Clem. Just showing up. This game is Maru versus Clem from DreamHack Winter, and it's the group stage. So, and Pillars of Gold. How is like what do we like right now? What's in the meta the best map for TvT?
TvT?
Oh, sorry, not TvT, just Terran in general. Sorry, Terran in general. Terran like TvT, TvP. I know where it's TvT episode, but I mean,
I think you want to stop it right now.
Oh.
Yeah, because there's some major addition being made. So I think Maru went for 2 Rex Reaper.
Typical Maru.
And yeah, this Clem, right? Oh yeah, this Clem.
Yes.
So
yes.
Clem went for 1 guess expand. At least that's its plan. So if you go for
Reaper
1
too.
Yeah, so if you go 1 guess expand against 2 Rex Boss Reaper, you cannot expand. You just gotta cancel it. And then you're gonna build bunker on your main base and tie up. So that is the response that Clem is doing here.
How did he scout it? It doesn't look like he went across the map with an SCV, did he? Did he just like move his SCV to the proxy? Can we check his vision?
Yeah, oh, I was gonna just do a
that's fine. That's fine. Oh, he did go across with SCV.
Yeah. Usually when you go one barrack expand, you almost always scout somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
He saw.
Because of this very reason. If you go one racks Reaper expand and they're proxy Reapering you and you don't scout it, you die. Like there's honestly not much you can do. Like you have to know it's coming. So at a minimum, you can have SCVs chilling at the wall. So if the Reaper jumps up, they won't be able to get much done. Best case scenario is if you have bunkers in time, as Clem's doing.
And he does. He does get them in time. He gets them pretty securely. Gets 2 bunkers up here.
And I think this really shows the value of the 2 gas opening, because if you see Proxy Reaper, you don't have to build bunker. You already have a factory up for Helen, so that's all you need to defend. You don't need bunker. But because right now, like if you want one barrack expand, you got to get the.
And we discussed this a little bit earlier before the show. This idea that Maru comes and steals.
It's so amusing.
He just steals this reactor. And we were talking about whether or not it really affected anything.
It definitely delays Cyclone production, which is pretty big. Whether jumping up and down to try and get his opponent to kill his own tech lab, if there's value there, is I think a little debatable, but I find it very amusing that
funny shenanigans.
He could have got his opponent to kill his own tech lab. Because every time he lifts, the units automatically retarget to the tech lab.
I see. That was clever.
It's amusing to me.
Well, it's amusing in general. Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to focus on in this kind of discussion is the mid game. So we're gonna go a little bit faster until we get to the mid game. So while we wait to get there, what are we looking at normal mid games in TvT?
You want to pause?
Yep.
So you can see from the production tab, right? Maru is getting the Matthew accelerator upgrade.
That's
so you can go to space. Maru space. Yeah. The blue base.
Oops, sorry.
The blue base. Yeah.
Got it. Sorry.
Right. So usually when you go for Matthew accelerator, you have the second factory in TvT, whereby you have you kind of start your game with like 4 to 5, 3 to 5 cyclone, right? So that is the how you make full use of the Matthew accelerator, right? So you control it with cyclone, and usually it transfers to Mac. So that is the plan, and it's relatively uncommon for Terran to just get one factory and go straight into Matthew accelerator. So you look at what he has right now. He only have one cyclone, second cyclone being made, and perhaps he just make the third one and only have 3 cyclones to use the Matthew accelerator, right? And that does not maximize the value of it. You rather just probably no point adding it. But the key is you kind of, if you show it early to the opponent may think that, okay, there's a high likelihood that you're going back. So that is one thing that he has in mind right now. It's kind of rare to have one factory with Matthew accelerator in the current meta.
So this is not indicating a potential shift in the meta. It's more, hey, I'm going to mind game you into thinking I'm doing X build in the meta, when in reality, I'm playing something else.
I was gonna say, so it's essentially mind games.
And I think there's even more to it, because usually when you 2 barracks Reaper up, and the opponent is using one barracks expand. Yep. It's this very unique change of roles. So because you have to cancel your CC for the bunker, right? Then the opponent has to, all right, there's no point. There's no enough money for me to put down a CC. I got to put down a factory as well. So in the end, the player who's planned to expand will have quicker tech compared to the Reaper player. And then the Reaper player will be like, okay, I'm going to expand slightly earlier than the supposedly fast expand player. So they did this small dynamic change in terms of the role. So right now, technically, the Maru should have the better econ, but because he kind of delay his CC a little bit for the factory and stuff for the factory accelerator, it kind of balances it off right now. So you can see the S series are about the same.
So you didn't really gain.
So basically, it become a equilibrium right now. Like it kind of the whole game kind of start anew.
Right. It's kind of like
both expand. Yeah.
Right. We pretty much came to a leveling point because there wasn't much gained because of the direction going for Mag's accelerator and the late CC.
Yeah. Before we keep going, there's one other thing I want to comment on, which is what do you guys think of the cloakless Banshee from Clem? Right. It's very, very, very uncommon, at least in my opinion, and from what I've noticed, to see Banshees in TvT ever since the Raven change. Because the standard build is like you get 2 to 3 Reapers, 1 to 2 Hellions, and then a Raven. And the Raven will start building up energy so you can bust your opponent's tanks later on. And because the standard build is to get a Raven, almost nobody goes Banshee anymore. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts on the matter is. You think this is...
I think the point about Raven makes a lot of sense because there's no point getting Cloak Banshee when opponents don't get Raven, and you can see in recent GSL final, TY there are 2 games he went 1 Banshee. I mean more than 1. Some he get Cloak. The point is there are certain opening interaction whereby Banshee there's a small window you can do damage. So in this case,
really.
Let's say, right, so if you go for 2 Barracks Reaper, and generally you have like 4 to 5 Reaper, so your attack is delayed, but I mean, in this case, Maru didn't go for the 5 Reaper, but the point is, because you have so much gas, right, on Reaper, you cannot take up your factory that early, and you just spend the overflowing mineral to expand, and by the time you have factory, you have your Raven, you have much later than opponents' starport timing. So the Banshee, there's a small window, but you do not have to attack to deal with a Banshee. So there's a small window, but after it's a good way to counter opponents' double Reaper. So it's a very minor. It's optional. Sometimes this just doesn't work. Sometimes like in this case, right? Like Reaper. Maru did not commit to 4 to 5 Reaper that he normally does. He went straight to some other things. So you can see this minor trade-off whereby it's supposed to work in opening subsequent moves, but now you probably won't work. You can see when you go there, the cyclone should shut it off.
So what's the window for getting work in with this Banshee?
Okay, so the default is once you defend yourself with the bunkers, the 2 bunker, you're taking out directly to Raven, right? So I mean not Raven, the starport. So once you get starport, you immediately get Banshee and immediately send across the map.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like the minute if you get your starport, you pop that Banshee out and send it. That's your window.
Yes. Yeah. Like you need to do immediately.
And even then, I think it's going to be tough because often your opponent will have a cyclone by the time they get across the map.
Raven's coming out, so obviously
in this case, Maru is much earlier in his transition to tech, but more the default. If you get 4 to 5 Reapers, right?
Right.
Maru wouldn't have what he has right now.
Yeah, it wouldn't have Magfield or the Raven or the starport, but he probably still have a cyclone, which is why part of what surprises me. Like he can maybe kill 1 or 2 SCVs, but this is kind of
usually I can't use it well. I did that before, like copying the pros, but I cannot like get the value that they do with a Banshee.
Yeah, pros definitely seem to have better Banshee control than the rest of us. Like I'm like, holy moly, how do they kill like 8 workers in that situation when they're on top of the detection and whatnot?
Oh, Magfield accelerators with the finish. So Clem, I thought he was going to come in. He's not coming in immediately for this Banshee.
That's another option for it because for the Banshee, sometimes like it's kind of like you chill with your liberator at the edge of the map. Then when you know where the opponent is or when you start the engagement, so you kind of force opponent to have attention on the so-called main battle. That's when you fly in and
I
start
see.
doing damage. Yeah,
You get some work in while they're distracted.
Yeah. So you kind of show certain things elsewhere. Oh, that's where I push my Cyclone, my Raven are. Right, then, let's run the bench, you can go in.
Got it. Okay, so
what Maru is doing right now is very interesting. So, like I said before, he's just going to get one factory for the Mafia Accelerator, but he got just put down more barracks, right? So he never really planned to go for the 3 factory center mag thing. So that, like I said earlier, is very likely just a bluff.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. He's not going mech. He's just bluffing to mech. Did Clem take that bait? I don't think he did.
They didn't really have interaction, but you can see, right? After Maru did what he planned to do, he kind of positioned his Cyclone a bit more forward. There you go. So he's showing purposely trying to make engagement to show the opponent I have Mafia Accelerator.
Right.
If you just gonna sit in your base, there's no way opponent's gonna bite it, right? So you can see he pushed forward like, hey, I have Mafia Accelerator, I have 3 Cyclones.
Yeah, but wouldn't a couple of scans drop down and that bluff would have been, oh, here's that Cyclone. I mean, a Banshee coming in.
Yeah, so you can see Clem's very smart. Oh, this is where Cyclones are. You don't have Cyclone at home. I'm going to go in by Banshee now.
Okay.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
So right now you can look at Clem's barracks. I look at his production on the add-on. If he get multiple tech lab when he go to 5 barracks, so whether he got 3 tech lab, 2 reactor, that means he took the bait. But if he did not, then he did not take the bait.
Wait, say that part again. If he in
TvT, if the opponent is going mag, when you have 5 barracks, you get 3 tech labs, 2 reactors, because you know Marauders, right?
Right.
But and if he does that, it's sure to take the bait. And if he did not, he go for the conventional for
standard
reactor 1 tech lab. That means he didn't take the bait. Right. Because that's when go Marine.
And so,
let's see whether he get it.
Yeah. So Maru pushes with Magfield Accelerator. Clem doesn't take the bait, goes the same. Maru then goes the standard plan. Is it likely in a pros game for a player to get baited like that? I wonder.
Actually, it works better in pros game, to be honest.
Really? Oh, okay.
Because they know what to look for.
Yeah, they know all the minor differences. Oh, you should have this, that. Why did you do that?
Right.
It's very, very fine. Like you play against trash like me, so I forgot what I started.
Yeah, against our legs, they'd probably not even notice that we had Magfield Accelerator. And not only that, but we would have killed the 3rd with the Cyclones. That,
so you can see here Clem, right? He make an attack because it's a small window with so many Cyclone. It's bad against Marine and Tank, right? So make a push. But as he make a push, he noticed that the unit that Maru has doesn't look like Mag, right? With the Viking and the Raven and all that stuff. You will otherwise commit more to Cyclone, which is better, rather than going to Viking if you going that Mafia Accelerator stuff. So you can see that Clem dropping 2 more reactor on the 4th and 5th barracks. So it's like, okay, it's just Marine tank. So he didn't take a bait.
So there's something that you talked about in one of your articles, this idea of, and I can't remember if it was mid or late game, where Terrans will go the general style of control and aggressive. And, where control essentially is holding air with Vikings or Viking combinations of Vikings. And then aggressiveness. Was it aggressiveness that you had seen more changes around, or was it more different styles of control?
I think a bit of play style and a bit of the map. So in this case, Clem, in my my viewing experience, he's usually prefer to attack more in almost every matchup. So this is play style, right? And you can see here he make many medevac. He's just like, okay, I'm not going to make the mass Viking thing. I'm just going to make Marine tank medevac, right? And it's kind of rare to see that many medevac, even if you want to go for medevac. And perhaps it's because of the earlier decision to be like, right, you make multiple cyclone, you're weak against Marine tank medevac at the point of time. So he kind of like, okay, although I'm like not taking a bit, I still already make quite a number of medevac, so why not I just keep being the aggressor? But you can see from the production tab, this is very interesting, right? There's this still optimum unit composition. So it's like, okay, I do not need more medevac. Like 7 is a lot, right? Usually you start with 6.
6 is still a lot. Like 6 was a high. That's the max.
Yeah, 4 to 6 is like, yeah, it's the number for if you want to be more aggressive. So right now here there's 7. Okay, I'm going to do a big doom job, right? But he knows that he cannot keep doing it, and that's why you look at production tab, he's making Viking.
Right. Okay.
Conversely, if you look at Maru, he knows opponent have many medevac. He has no Viking. So it's like, oh well, there's no point making additional pair of Viking. Already have air control. Right. So it's like, okay, now conversely, he need to get some medevac. He got a window to make some medevac for his Marine. All right. So you can see both sides are going converging back to the optimum unit composition.
I was gonna say, so right now Maru has air control, and he's probably gonna hold air control. What do you think in your mind is the best way to kind of wrestle that air control back from, or do you just don't wrestle that air control back? You let them take it, and you come from like multi-prong attacks with maybe medevacs or and leave the air control to your opponent.
Based on my observations, you can see games like Beyond, Clem, they still want to attack because like if you're going to transition to take the air control back, you're always behind.
That's right? What I was thinking. So you don't try to take it back.
You need to make use of what you have to try to equalize things in some way.
Right.
And then you try to get back the air control somehow. And the usual subsequent move is to get a second starport with reactor. So you have 2 reactor starport, and you make more Viking to kind of catch up on the air control count. So that is the more conventional way of doing it.
Okay. All right, are we good to let's see how this plays out?
Yeah, for sure.
Good.
This is really risky to load up in your own base and then you fly across the map like that without your Marine somehow on the middle of the map to spot the things.
Yeah, no, this is crazy risky.
What's going on over there? Yeah, I think this actually doesn't. If I remember, this actually doesn't pay off because I'm pretty sure he remembers he flies right into. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. All right.
And that's why you don't do this if you can help it. But like,
what was the also it really shows high level play. So you can see right that Clem has 2 Marines at this location, so he kind of scout here, right? There's nothing here. He didn't push anything here, so it allows my doom job to happen, right? You did not have a 4th here.
Right.
At the same time, Maru is like, oh, you have a lot of medevac. Doom job is a high possibility.
Right.
So he can see where pushing his units. And at the same time, he moved his SCV to build a supply depot to give himself a reaction time. At the top left later on, you can see he's trying to build a supply depot there.
Okay.
Yeah.
He hasn't built it yet, but he builds it like
right.
He
will by.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the
so you can see like all this
way.
deduction of like what you have, what you can do right now. Right. So you can see all this deduction from both players, really high level stuff. So you can see.
Here it is. Here it is. And it runs into these Marines, so he knows.
So he can. Oh, he saw it. Right.
And he moved into position. Right.
Yeah. There you go.
Beautiful.
And now he's going to move his land army to that location. There you go. Because opponent can just unload and just attack on the ground anyway.
He was ready. Oh, he's ready. Man.
Yeah.
Sometimes I really would like to be a pro because just the high level. I was recently watching Queen's Gambit, and I was like, man, it's like watching ancient Starcraft. It's such a beautiful game.
And you can see, right, Maru has to right inch forward because he's an air control and liberator.
Yes, yeah. He has this. He has the airspace, right? He just moves the liberator fast, forcing the tanks to unsiege. So he has it. So with Clem on the back foot like this, what are the options? Oh, another
He
problem.
got to attack. Yeah, exactly. He has the mobility, and he forced. That's why he did not like. Oh, you have liberator. I'm just gonna move back the hell up, right? He need to force the pressure on him off, so he create a window at the south to give you the attack like this.
Okay, all right.
So you can see it's a clear cut road dynamic here, right? One side is attacker, the other side is defender. There you go.
He's going for it. He created the opportunity.
It forces you to move your army, right? So there you go.
Okay. So this doesn't look very helpful.
No, I mean Clem did a really good job. Really
right.
There you go.
Oh wow, booyakasha. Wow.
Also a lesson: never you use F2.
Maru's known to use it quite a bit.
Is he?
From what I've been told, I don't personally sit over his shoulder and watch, but I've heard like I want to say Euthermal on his YouTube channel talk about it, but I could be wrong. I'm someone on YouTube who wasn't Maru, and I'm trusting them.
So that was I think from those games that we just watched, from early game, mid game, late game, is that kind of what you've seen before, Max, in terms of late game trends?
Usually the game doesn't end like this. So the game goes longer.
And so we do have one.
At pro level, right? You don't make mistake like this, like the Maru just did. Partly, I mean, if you ask him, he will say, "Yeah, he made a mistake." At the same time, it has a lot to do with the map.
Right.
So in the map, you can see that at the third location, opponent can pressure you like, "Hey, I'm going to attack you right here." So you pushing your units there, and then your main is so open. There's an airspace, so you can just fly in. All right. So Doom Drop works well on this map.
Right.
Yeah. So
map Pillars of Gold. Definitely a map that favors that. So we have one more game to go for. We're gonna zoom into, just for constant time, we're gonna zoom straight as close to the mid game to late game in this one. This is Cure versus TY, and this is semifinals of the Kings of Battles. So yeah. Did you get a chance to see this one, Max?
I think I watched the vote.
I think you did. I'm pretty sure you linked it in one of your articles.
Yeah.
So
I think it went to late game, and yeah, it really shows how good TY is.
Yeah. So we'll bounce into the mid game right away, and then we'll go into the late game and talk about the late game.
So building up from the last game, we talked about mid game, right? By one guy being the attacker, the guy being defender.
Yeah.
So Maru trend towards being a defender most of the time because he like the air control, and Clem, he just play to just let it attack. So it kind of play to their own style in the last game.
Their strengths and
yeah. And in this game, if I recall correctly, it is kind of no clear cut who is the attacker and defender in terms of the army composition.
Right. So this one, 4 Hellions and a Reaper.
Oh, that's because a Cure went for 1 barrack expand.
I see.
Because if you go 1 barrack expand, you want to go Helen against 2 gas opening.
Got it. So Kings of Battles also featured a lot of Terran in the finals. So a lot of
Terran
opportunities.
patch.
Yeah. Terran patch.
I'm okay with that.
Oh.
You're supposed to keep that on the down low. Don't let Blizzard find out.
Revealed. It's fine. They're not coming to patch anything anytime soon. I where are we? So we're at 7 minutes in.
Yeah, I think you can pause here.
Well,
Click the unit tab. So you can see both are very even in terms of their units. Just that
right.
TY has slightly one additional production you can see from the reactor.
Right.
Right. So there's only more Viking and a medevac. So it's a, if I recall this game correctly, that's because he did a bit of a economic damage early on. So his test is slightly earlier, the production is slightly earlier. So you can see that there's a slight advantage here in terms of unit production and all the stuff, right? SC recount. So it's kind of like snowballing from the early damage that they did.
Right.
However, you can see the general trend that they hit towards both sides getting Raven, Marine, Tank, and Viking. So there's no clean cut who is the attacker based on the units compared to what we saw with Maru and Clem.
Right. Isn't it a little bit more clear because TY did do the damage on Cure, did the economy damage. He could gain sort of a superiority and control the tempo of the game, couldn't he?
Yes, he can. So you can see using the same unit composition, he's the one who is kind of like inching forward more than Cure does.
Sure. Yeah.
Right, because he has more, right? So you can see that eventually he's going to move out and do something.
Right. Okay. Let's keep going. Because now we're getting the Vikings, pumping them out. What are we looking at in production? Yeah, Vikings are coming out at like. We can probably slow down just a little bit.
So right now the goal of TY is like, I'm going to, since I suddenly have more, I'm ahead, right? I'm going to delay your fourth while I take my fourth.
Right.
Oh, that is a mistake.
Oh.
That is a mistake.
I actually would like to see that mistake.
Yeah, that's a pretty massive mistake too.
Yeah.
Now, how did that end up happening to him? Was that because he got interference matrix first? What happened here? What went wrong?
So basically, he's trying to posture here to like, I'm going to attack. But he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to move back and try to do some auto turret harass. But Kyo just caught him, right? And supposedly, it should be kind of even on the Viking wall at the point of time. But the interference matrix hit off first, so TY cannot say, okay, let's take a Viking trade then. And he's like, okay, screw it. I'm just going to move my Viking back and try to make the most out of the Raven that I have, because the Raven can't run away anyway.
Right, all right. Oh.
So that's what he's trying to do here.
Oh. I like the little aggressive Ravens auto turrets.
Yeah. So right now, Cure has the air control because it's just throw away all the Viking.
Yeah.
And you can see, right, TI is like, he knows he still has the like superior army count, even though he lost some of the Viking, which is not ideal. But you can see the way he's pushing himself is like, I'm not trying to kill you or anything, but I'm going to delay you from taking your fourth. So you can see he leaves some tanks there, moving around, finding room to do some damage.
The goal is just here to delay him. Because he still has this, like, TY still has the superior unit army supply. So
you can see TY is like, okay, since that's a game I'm playing right now, I'm just gonna make more melee. But you can see, right, he already got like 4, and then he made 2 more. Right. So you can see he's changing his game plan. Like in the middle of the game, like I lost my Viking, right? There's no point keep going for it, and he's taking his own fourth. So that is like, okay, since I'm attacking, I'm going to be delaying your fourth, but why I'm going to expanding more. So he already got his fourth, and you can see like Kyo's like, no, I got to keep defending. I cannot take a fourth.
Okay. What's your thoughts, Doc?
So see again here, TY's.
I basically agree with everything that Max has been saying. He's right on the money. My only thought is, dang, TY's a tactical genius. Like, he's very good at thinking through what he should be doing at different parts of the game and playing with the best strategy he can. Like Max was saying, like once he lost the Ravens, and he didn't actually lose the Ravens, but he lost the Vikings. So there's no more point in making Vikings. So,
like out of all the Pro Terrans, which do you favor the most, Doc? In terms of like maybe a playstyle that you mirror after?
well, you're supposed to play like Maru, right? That's what they all say.
All right, well,
yeah, just play like Maru. Beyond's my favorite, but I don't know. I don't really model my play after pros because I can't play like them. So I try and find play styles that are more appropriate for my level.
It's kind of sad. Like even the top players, although they are very refining differences in their style a little bit here and there, but they are still very, very similar because how we figure out the game, like that players say, okay, this is the good thing, right? So most players are able to do it at a high level.
Yeah.
When they reach their skill ceiling. So the style differences is not that obvious compared to what we have in the past.
Right, but wouldn't you say maybe some pros play more aggressive than other pros, or some pros maybe are more prone to play
for sure.
a little bit more gambly than other pros?
Beyond doesn't know how to build a fourth command center, so I'm not even joking. Like anytime he takes his fourth, he lifts his main and flies it somewhere else. Like he
really?
Yeah, no, like almost every time. Like he'll always lift his main and fly it to his fourth, and he's always just like, I will attack, I will attack, I will attack. That's his game plan.
Okay, so here we are. We're getting definitely into the end throws of the game. Liberators, Vikings, air control, inching. So break it down for us, Max. What are we kind of seeing here in terms of air superiority and the playstyle changes?
So as we talked earlier on, that TY is being an attacker. I mean, we want to pause here. So TY is being the attacker, and look at the name on the bottom. The bombers keep showing me off. And Kyo is the defender, right? So the goal is very clear. Kyo wants to, right, I don't take damage. I want to take my fourth, right? And TY is trying to be doing the way around. Like, I don't want to let you take your fourth while I take my fourth. So that is the whole game plan here. And I think TY did it very successfully to pin Kyo in his space. And you can see, right, the economy advantage is very obvious. You can look at TY. He has his fourth running much earlier, and it's like, okay, I have my fifth, my sixth, just throw down, right? While you are struggling to secure fourth mining. So the advantage is clear here. Now, usually when that happens, you can do whatever you want. And for TY, like, right, I'm going back to kick back my air control. I did not have air control to get the mobility to not letting you take the fourth, but right now, like, they kind of stabilize. I cannot really do much with what I have, marine tank, medevac. So I'm going to take back air control. Eventually, that is the late game thing. And you can see in TY's production, right, top left hand corner, is like, look at the number of starports he has. He added like, he has 3 starports, all of them with reactor, right? And because he has the economy going for him, it allows him to, like, I can get back air control with this mana.
Okay, so you can sustain it because he's obviously going 5th and 6th right now. He has has the minerals for it. And so is it okay for him? Because he lost air control slightly here, right?
I think it's more about a trade that TY wouldn't mind making because he has more bases. Yeah. But whenever you have more bases, you always want to make even trades. It's always in your favor.
Got it.
So one very important thing that Kyo should have done, I mean, it's easy for me to sit on my armchair and say this, is when the opponent is doing what TY is doing, right? Like attacking 2 sides, having all the army on your end, and you have Viking at defense and opponent medevac, is you send a pair of medevac with marines, snake out to the map, and try to attack opponent's newest base.
Got it. Okay.
So that's what Kyo should have done, but he didn't do it. Right. So if we had done that, TY's fourth wouldn't be running so smoothly and getting a 5th, getting a 6th. Right. So and TY cannot push in all his unit offensively that he did for the last probably 3 to 5 minutes.
Well, he's playing on the back foot here, it feels.
Yeah.
But I guess he could have probably spared a few medevacs.
Because the additional medevac of Marine does not matter that much when you be defensive, because mainly using a tank to be defensive.
Right. So you could have gone for the push. Okay. Let's hunch forward.
It's funny that literally the second I was about to comment on how Kier's 3-3 is faster, and he might have a window to come back. TY starts his 3-3, so the window won't be quite that big.
Well, and it's closing. It's closing really quick. Oh. At this point, though, what are the core options for Cure? Well, I guess he's taking them now, which is to press in.
I think right now Cure is like, okay, I mean, because TvT, right? If open at more bases, as long as you don't make bad trade or even trade, it's fine, because quite often TvT just have like one big major trade, so your economy lead is not as great compared to other matchup.
Got it.
In this case, it'd be like, I'm just going to make the best of what I have in these settings. You're trying to use this army to catch TY's army on the north, but TY back off right in time. So it's like, since I'm there, I'm just going to attack your newest base, and TY was exposed, so he lost a base. But I think TY is fine because it's so many bases.
Well,
and now you go back to Frank and solo this army as well. So right now you can actually, it's very even, pretty much.
TY definitely has the echo advantage, but it only takes you so far. When in Terran versus Terran, it's all about the positioning of the fights. And if you get on top of your opponent's production, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. So it's still very possible for Bomber to win here.
Bomber.
Oh, no, gosh darn it, Kier.
Yes.
It says Bomber. I don't understand why it says Bomber.
I don't know.
It's so silly. But anyways, it's still possible for Kier to win here, because whenever the units it says Kier, I don't get it. It's still possible for Kier to win, but it's going to be tricky.
One thing is worth mentioning is Kier is, you look at the production tab, right? Kier is transitioning to Raven. All right, you can see the Raven upgrade, multiple starport with tech lab building now.
Right.
And TY, he's like, no Raven, I'm just still going to be using the reactor starport. So this is a contrast in late game TvT air control style. Do you want to go for more Viking and Leap, or do you want to go for more Raven? On paper, is that the one with Viking and Liberator, you're less mobile, so you can be more defensive.
Right.
And as Maru has shown time after time, if you have mass Raven in the late game, it's okay to sacrifice them to opponent's Viking, as long as you win the big fight. So you have all the interference matrix, you have the anti-armor missile, so you can be one who's more mobile. He add more barracks, produce less tank. Yeah, just focus more on the mobility. So you can see a contrast in style right here in the late game.
Which have you been more favorable of in those choices?
For player on my stress level, I definitely wouldn't want to go Raven, because it's too hard to control. Really, really hard.
I would agree with that. Raven is, I think, the biggest differentiator between my league and pro level play is in my league no one can control Ravens well. So,
well, even from watching pro games, Max and the Doc, what do you prefer to see in the late game?
I think the strongest thing you can do is what TY has, where once you get air control, you just creep forward with Liberators, and there's not much your opponent can realistically do. Their only real option is get medevacs and try and out position or out harass or like outmaneuver your opponent somehow, because you can't fight this head on. The only real way to bust the Liberators, is with Thors, but that's not really an option if you're not mech. And even if you are mech, it's not great because you're still going to lose Thors while pushing forward.
So. I was gonna say, so it feels like, and it probably is, the idea that whoever has air control close to late game probably will win. Is that?
Yeah, whoever has air control
Maru is no.
Well, I feel like
Maru
Maru
is
is like an exception, but
So he has some games which I think is probably go down to some of the best games this year. He has some games, I think in the same tournament against Clem and Cure in the Battle of Kings.
yeah.
So he get Raven early on and he got air control, but opponents like what TY is doing right now, like Mass 5K, Mass Liberator. So he lost control.
Right.
But intuitively, you'd be like, hey, if you lost control, why do you keep making Raven, right? You should be trying to get back air control in some sense. But Raven is Marvel's like, no, I'm not getting air control, but you can have the air control, but I'm going to have Mass, Raven, and Marine.
Okay.
So his answer to it is, I'm just going to out multitask you, attacking multiple locations, get good value with my Raven, and just use Marine's high DPS to get around things, right? So that is his solution. Like what Ian was saying, there's not much you can do. You cannot attack into the TOS army like you can see it, right?
Yeah.
So Maru's answer is, I'm not going to out air control you, but I'm not going to engage and just try to out multitask you. So that is his solution.
So there isn't a solution. Like, so let me get this right. So the solution is really to just try to outmaneuver your opponent at this point, because you can't go head on.
Yes, and the prerequisite for that is you must have a good economy, and Cure doesn't have that.
Yeah, he's still being denied. Oh, and
yeah, there you
here
go.
we are, and that's the answer. So
yeah, I think having air control, you're definitely favored. It's not impossible for the person without air control to come back, and it's always potentially possible to get more starports than your opponent and win air control back that way. But it's definitely, I think, a little bit of an uphill fight if you lose your air control.
Just move back into your camera. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you switched.
Yes, my bad. Yeah. So there we have it. We've done. So now that we've gone through these 3 replays, what's the future of TvT look like?
Battlecruiser. we must go straight to Battlecruiser and only make Battlecruiser.
I think TvT is really healthy as of now. So there's no one way of playing it.
Yeah,
it's a good sign. If an opening, there's a good range, but there's no clear-cut favor. So you have 2 gas. Even the 2 gas, you get more beautifying this year. You can have 1 barracks, 1 gas expand. Even 1 barracks, 1 gas expand. TY is trying to use 16 gas more often, 1 than 15. Conventionally, it was like 15 is the default one. So you have that as well. And the proxy will never go away.
Yeah.
So it becomes an option as well. So the 3 main options you have here is pretty solid. Mid-game wise, you can see people going back and forth with this minor stuff. Ian and I just talked about before the show start about, in the mid-game, normally you have 1-1-1 with expansion. Then you can take a third, right? That is the dominating way of playing right now. Recently, I've seen some pros kind of diverge away from it a little bit. Rather than getting a third as early as possible, they get their 2nd or 3rd barracks. The point is, whether get a 3rd barracks is slightly secondary, but it's just get additional barracks to get a steam early, rather than getting your 3rd early. And because of this, it gives you a window whereby opponent doesn't have steam and have a 3rd vulnerable, and you can attack into it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
you see that in TY with Maru recently.
One thing we didn't talk about, though, when we discussed this earlier, is what you do with your starport while you're getting stem. Because stem obviously damages your own units, and ideally you want to have medevacs to go with that, but medevacs are honestly the starport unit you want to produce the least of, because if you are producing medevacs, you're not getting Ravens and you're not getting Vikings, at least early game. You want the medevacs, but you don't want to have to give up Vikings or air control in order to get medevacs. So do you make medevac with the stem, or do you get Ravens or Vikings to try and fight for air control?
Usually what is observed is they get a pair of medevac when the stem is about to finish, so it line up the attack. So when you
Gotcha.
move up, then you have the medevac. That's for you, like 2 medevacs or maybe 3 if you make an early medevac, do a job that didn't die. You have 3 coming.
For sure,
But
for sure.
Usually you have 2 just for the attack.
Gotcha.
For the steam.
So you'd be really looking to get at least a little bit done with the attack to justify getting behind in Vikings and Ravens.
Yeah.
At least I would imagine.
If I recall correctly, it is Maru versus TY GSL final in Peel of Gold with TY on the bottom left and Maru up on top right. And TY went for trying to do a job, but Maru scouted it, so he did not do a early one medevac job. Stayed back, but he get a second barracks to get steam. And then he tried to do what I just mentioned, right? But Maru scouted the additional barracks and the steam, so he did not land his turret at the normal timing.
Right.
Because he can't defend it. And then when he himself get more stuff, then he lands his turret. So that is kind of like a new way of playing. I won't say new way of playing, but it's old,
Yeah, no, for sure.
An old way.
Yeah, but in the old way is you either get 2 more barracks versus the third command center, right? But what TY did is, I'm not gonna get the third one, but I'm just gonna get a second barracks enough for me to get steam and more marines for the steam to work, and that's it, right? Then he just go back to third command center and stuff. So you can see TY really understand all this minor switch around of builds.
For sure.
Really
well. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's definitely a bit of a refresh of an older style. The 2-1-1's been around for many, many years now. And honestly, my comment about battlecruisers, I was only half joking. In StarCraft 1, well, I honestly think it's very strong late game. In StarCraft 1, it's the dominant late game strategy. And in StarCraft 2, I think it is true to some extent, potentially. Like, I think even in the most recent GSL finals, they had a TvT that went to Battlecruiser Raven Viking as the ultimate end game composition. Do you think that's something I want to ask you, Max? Do you think that's something that we will potentially see more of as players continue to get better and continue to stabilize for longer periods of the game? Do you think they'll naturally transition to battlecruisers more frequently? Or do you think it's something that's very niche?
I would say it's more niche in this case. If you look at the game that the game you mentioned, like the GSL final, whereby you have the battlecruiser and stuff, that's a game that TY cut tank production in mid-game. And that's kind of risky. But from meta game standpoint, well, if both sides don't get attacked, then no, it's fine. Right?
For sure. So
the bad thing about the battlecruiser is, Raven is still good. If you get disabled, is the battlecruiser is gonna be dead, right? Pretty easily. So that becomes a very difficult style to play to get value of the battlecruiser. You must know where the opponent's army is and when to send your stuff. And when you're sending your stuff, you cannot just jump in, right? You have to leave the jump to escape. So you can go around the map, having the right timing. If you're gonna go there, then army is gonna be there, or all this. It's easy for us as observer who see both sides. We have map hack as observer, but for them, to make an addition is kind of hard. So all it takes is you lose your battlecruiser by committing. So TY actually, I think he almost lost a game because he jumped all his battlecruiser and get into a trap.
That's a massive mistake in my opinion. You don't want to do that. I think
the biggest mistake in the game is he forgot to get air attack.
So I think that's the thing you have to be worried about battlecruisers is you put the investment in and that investment turns out just a sink because of lack of information and going into the fog of war and losing all of it just to one misstep.
Gotcha. So the investment is just too great and we probably won't see too much more of that. Which makes me a little sad. Battlecruisers are my favorite unit. I have the battlecruiser model right here on my desk. So I'm a big fan of the unit. But
Stop trying to make battlecruisers happen. It's not gonna happen.
maybe if I play enough in Diamond, like the meta will like traverse upwards, you know, like then people in Masters will see it, and then we'll see it at the pro level, you know. Maybe one day. So
Maybe.
I think battlecruiser is still a healthy, occasional thing. As you can see, like sometimes TY uses it in the late game, and some other players do the same thing, and it kind of add the dynamic to the late game TvT. You have Raven, you have battlecruiser, you have liberators. It really bounces off. Like there's no clear cut which is better as of current knowledge, and it's a lot less about. But it's not a turn-based thing, right? Like I throw rock, you throw paper. One player win. It's a lot about the real time when you do certain things, how you do certain things. So it becomes a lot more interesting to see like, battlecruiser like Raven. Like, so what are the key aspects that you need to look for? Oh, you cannot send in and the Raven disable you. You really just did it. Okay, so there's a key thing. Oh, so what happens if it's leap? Well, the leap player perhaps need to transition to more Raven against battlecruiser because you cannot use leap and Viking against battlecruiser. Maybe because of number, for example, right? And like all these minor things start to become
for sure
interesting dynamic in the late game.
All right. So, coming to wrapping it up, some final thoughts before on TvT trends in the meta. Why don't we go with you, Max? Final thoughts?
I don't think there'll be that many changes in the future because right now we have a very diverse way of playing. It's hard to pinpoint what is the dominant. It's so much about every unit is usable, many options, and how you can get small advantage through the small window that you have. So this is the main thing now. So there's no much room for like a big over here. Like, hey, wow, this is like the one thing that you should do. All right. So I think it's going to keep the same, being refreshing, different styles is going to happen. We might see some slightly more popular choices. And then, we see the typical game theory. Oh, if you do that more often, I'm going to do the other thing more often, right? In terms of imperfect information. But there's no real big changes in the meta game. That's how I think it is.
Got it. All right. So, and we already know, Ian, you want battle cruisers, and that's not happening. So,
yeah, big sad.
Yeah, Max. So, where can people find you and get more information about things that you're working on?
Right. I mainly write on TerranCraft.com, so that's it. You can find me there, and you can find my Twitter, Facebook, all these things on TerranCraft.com easily.
Got it. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen, and people of the internets. TerranCraft.com, across the internet, social. Do it.
Definitely check it out. It's a wonderful resource, and I
think it's like the Terran resource, to be honest.
Honestly, it's definitely up there, if not the number one. Like it's so good.
I couldn't think of another resource that is equally. I think the Zergs have a resource like as well, similar, but Protoss definitely does not. So, Terran players, you are very fortunate to have Max to be writing specifically for you.
And it's very knowledgeable.
Very much so. All right, that brings us to the end of our show. Let us know in comments and your thoughts on ranked and where you think we should go. If you think there is something we should cover next, or if a particular game or a particular style or topic, throw it in the comments and we will check it out. All right. Keep out there. Till next time, keep your eyes on the meta, strategies, and tactics, and we'll see you again. Bye.
Later.